Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm here to show you how to turn these 8 simple ingredients into a delicious sausage and pepper stew that will convince everyone you know how to cook, even though it is super duper easy to make. Let's pop on over to the stove and see how it works. Okay, so over here at our stove, and the first thing we need is our sausage. Okay, I like to use Italian sausage. You can make your own sausage, but if you buy the Italian sausage at the store, it's pretty good and will save you hours of work. Maybe someday we'll make our own sausage. I'll show you how to do it. But this is basically as good as any sausage you can make on your own. So what I'm going to do is keyword before we turn on the heat, we're going to put the sausage into the pan, okay? Now, it might not want to come out of the pan, which is why you need one of these bad boys, okay? A wooden spoon. You want to take this sausage, you want to teach it a lesson, you're going to shove it right in this pan, okay? Scrape it out of there. It's gross. It's disgusting. It's good for you. Builds character. You can do this with your fingers. If you do, make sure you wash them afterwards. Sausage is full of trichinosis. If you don't want to spend the next 3 days puking your guts out, don't touch this stuff or wash the hell out of your hands. Once it's in here, what we're going to do is we're going to spread it out and make a nice, thin, even layer across the bottom of the pan. Okay? The reason we don't turn the heat on before we do this is if we turn the heat on, if we put this into a scorching hot pan, this guy's going to start to brown immediately and caramelize, which is good, but all the fat's going to stay inside of it. And what we want to do is we want to get the sausage to release all that nice coagulated fat in there. So what we need to do is we need to heat it up nice and slow, so that way all of that fat melts into the pan, and we can use that fat in a second to brown up all of our vegetables in, because we know vegetables are gross, and the way we make them delicious is we soak them in meat fat. Okay? So make sure this pan is stone cold. After you get that sausage in there, you get it nice and spread out. You want to turn your heat on medium high. Okay? And you want to just leave it there for a couple minutes and let it get nice and warm and let all that delicious pork fat melt out of it. All right, so it's been about 3 minutes, and as you can see, the grease is starting to bubble up out of this sausage. And while that may look disgusting, and for all you vegans out there, you're probably freaking out to no end, this is actually good. We love all of this delicious sausage grease. So once you start to see that nice big puddle of grease on top of the sausage, what we can do is we can just, if we can get it to flip, sometimes you want a nice little spatula to do this. You just take this, and if you can't get it to all flip over at once because you're bad at life like I am, that's fine. Just take this big old sausage puck and give it a flip over. You can see we got a little bit of brown, and we just want to give it another minute or so to cook on this side. We want to get it nice and brown on both sides, okay? All that brownness, all those burning sugars are going to give us all of the flavor we want, that nice roasty, toasty meat flavor. So we're going to get a little bit more roasty, toasty meat flavor on the other side, and then we'll start cooking up our vegetables. Okay, so once you've given the sausage a little bit of time to brown on both sides, what we're going to do is we're going to take it out and put it, I've got just a little bowl here. We're going to take it out and put it off to the side. We're going to put it back later, okay? And once it's off to the side in this little bowl, what I like to do is just kind of break it up into chunks, okay? So I know it's kind of hard to see on this crappy piece of junk camera I have, but we're just going to take this sausage meat, break it up into little chunks. And once it's broken up into chunks, you take it off to the side. We're going to add our onions. You should have a nice pool of sausage grease here. If you don't have a pool of sausage grease, you need to add a little bit of cooking oil, okay? Because otherwise these onions are going to burn. And it's important so we're going to turn this down to medium heat. And it's important we have lots of grease in there because now we're going to take these onions and we're going to cook them down for about 15 or 20 minutes, okay, until they get nice and beautifully golden brown. So you just put them in there, keep stirring them, take off all these little brown parts. You can see I'm scraping them with my spoon. That's going to make the onions taste like delicious sausage. And we're just going to stir and stir and stir and stir and stir and stir. You need to stir these for like 20 minutes. I know you're going to tell me, but Boris, that's boring. I don't like stirring things for 20 minutes. Well, I have something to tell you about life. Life is boring. Life sucks. You have to do a bunch of things that are terrible if you want nice, wonderful, delicious things. So you're going to stand here and you're going to stir for 20 minutes. You could put on some music. You could bring your iPad with you. You could watch a show. You could annoy your girlfriend by jabbering consistently at her for the next 20 minutes. Whatever you got to do to keep yourself entertained, but you got to stand here and you got to stir for 20 minutes. All right? Just stirring, 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 stirring. Okay? I'll be back. I'll be back in about 10 minutes to add the next ingredient. Okay, we're going to have 20 minutes of stirring here. But in 10 minutes, we're going to come and add something else. So I'll be back then. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes. We've seen some of the smaller pieces of onion. They're starting to turn clear and translucent. You might ask why some of these pieces of onions are different colors when you look at them here. And that's because I'm a piece of crap who's way too lazy to actually take the time to cut them into even pieces. But if you were to take the time to cut them into even pieces, all of these would be just starting to turn clear. And when you see them starting to turn clear, what we're going to do is we're going to take some bell peppers. I've fire roasted. Here's some bell peppers. I've fire roasted these bell peppers. If you don't know what that means or what that is, Google it. It's not that hard to Google things. If you're too lazy or too stupid, which I hope is not the case, to Google things, you can just chop up some regular bell peppers and chuck them in there. You can buy fire roasted bell peppers in oil, but they're like 4 times as expensive and it takes like 30 seconds to fire roast bell peppers. Do it yourself. So when you get the bell peppers, you just gotta mix them in there with the onions, okay? And at this point, we're gonna add our first round of salt. Okay, we're gonna salt this multiple times. This is a salt shaker for those of you who don't know what a salt shaker is. And we're gonna put in a healthy sprinkle of salt, the equivalent of about 2 pinches of salt into these onions and bell peppers. This is 1 whole onion and 1 whole bell pepper, by the way. And we're just going to cook these down for another 10 minutes. So you just stand here for another 10 minutes, you stir, you watch your TV shows, you do not stop stirring for the next 10 minutes. I repeat, don't stop stirring. Are we trying to burn onions and bell peppers? No, we're trying to saute onions and bell peppers, so you got to keep stirring, 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 stirring. Alright, it's been about 10 more minutes. Our onions are starting to fall apart now, which is perfect. Our bell peppers are starting to soften up, and now we're going to add some garlic. Hopefully you know garlic is probably the most important part of Italian cooking. And unfortunately, since we're in coronavirus crazy cuckoo nana pants, the grocery store didn't have any actual garlic. So I'm going to use this garlic in a jar here. And if you can't find regular garlic, this is the best there is. And this garlic in a jar is way less strong than regular garlic. Woo! Listen to that start to spit and sizzle. So you need to put a lot of it in. Beautiful sounds. So you need to put a lot of that garlic in. If you're not using the pre-minced garlic, I put about 2 tablespoons of the pre-minced garlic in. If you're using real, like whole garlic, 3 or 4 small cloves or 3 big cloves. It's just about perfect. So we're going to add our garlic in. We're going to cook it for about another minute. And this is where we're going to start to add some actual spices. Okay? So something to keep in mind about spices is you need to add some spices at the beginning while cooking. And you need to add some spices right at the end before serving. Okay? So certain spices, like salt, should be added at the beginning and the end. So we're going to add another couple pinches of salt. And now we're going to also add some freshly ground black pepper. I'd say about a rough 15 turns. I like pepper a lot. We'll add maybe a 1/4 teaspoon. I'm reaching across to get my spices. I realize that's a terrible placement. But I'll add about a 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. If you like things spicier, you can add more. We're going to add a little bit of ancho chili powder. I realize this makes every Italian person roll over in their grave a little bit. But it's delicious, so they can suck it up and deal with it. And then we're also going to add a little bit of garlic powder. Garlic powder, interestingly enough, doesn't really taste anything like actual garlic. So I like to add both garlic and garlic powder to my recipe. Okay, so these are all spices that really taste a lot better once they've been cooked down a little. Okay, so we're going to take the onions and all those spices and cook them down a little bit. You can start to see this is almost forming a paste. Okay, any super stew that you want to cook up, like a gumbo or a pozole or anything like that, you want all those flavors to kind of make a delicious flavor paste at the bottom. That's what's going to give your stew body and flavor and goodness. Okay, that should work. Okay, now that we've got this kind of paste forming, we can use it to coat our vegetables. Okay, now I know you're saying, Mr. Boards, vegetables are disgusting, and, well, you're wrong. Vegetables are A, delicious if you cook them the right way, and B, nutritious. So for this recipe, we're going to add some zucchinis. I just cut them into little half moons here. There's about 2 zucchinis, and 2 small eggplants that I've cut into kind of 1/4 sized pieces here. And so we just dump everything in there, and keep in mind your pan is going to be hot, so you probably want to use a towel or a hot pad to hold it, and you want to mix this flavor paste all together with your veggies. Just make a nice big mess here, and you want to stir it for just a couple minutes until everything is nice and heated through. Okay. So you'll know your vegetables are ready. You should be able to touch one of these zucchinis. It should feel hot, but not so hot that it burns your hands. And I realize that's kind of a crazy thing to say, like, hey, touch this thing and see if it burns you. But if you're going to cook stuff, you're going to get burnt. Suck it up. Don't be weak.
Don't tell your parents.
Yeah, don't tell your parents I said getting burned is okay. And in addition to in the vein of things you can tell your parents, because not telling your parents things is bad. Italians here would put some wine in the recipe, but I realize you guys aren't 21, and I guess it would be wildly unethical to use alcohol in cooking, even though all the alcohol will cook off, and the final product will have no alcohol whatsoever. So we have right here this nice box of not wine. You can see it's labeled not wine, meaning it is not wine that we're putting in here, if you catch my drift. So we're going to put about a cup of not wine in here. You hear that sizzle? And after you put your not wine in there, you want to just really give it a good stir. All that brown crap on the bottom, you want to kind of scrape it with your spatula. All that brown crap is all the best flavor of all that sausage and onions that's been all cooked down. And that wine is going to deglaze the bottom of this pan. It's going to make all that crap come right off and mix in with your vegetables, making your vegetables taste like meaty, peppery goodness. So once you get all that brown stuff off the bottom, you can put your sausage in. And you're going to want to put in 1 big can of crushed tomatoes. Depending on how much crap you have in there, 1 can of tomatoes might be enough, or you might need 2 cans of tomatoes. You can always add in a little bit more not wine if you want to make up a little bit of that extra liquid. But you want to make sure all of the onions and peppers and zucchinis and sausage are all underneath that tomato layer there. So they can all kind of stew up and let their flavors mingle together. We're going to let this cook for about 45 minutes. This needs another can of tomatoes, which I'll put in a second. But we're going to let this cook for about 45 minutes, stirring every 10 minutes. So, you might find that that first can of tomatoes wasn't enough. You could always toss in another smaller can. I usually like to pick up a couple big cans and small cans at the grocery store. A can of tomatoes you can put in almost anything. It's a good thing to have lying around the house. So we'll let this cook for about 45 minutes, stirring every 10, and we'll come back and look and see what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so our stew's been cooking for about 45 minutes. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's sunk in about 1.5 inches. And the flavors have come together. We know it's done when our zucchinis are nice and soft, but they're not quite falling apart. When they start to fall apart, the sauce has gone too far. Now, I talked earlier about different kinds of spices and how we want to use some at the beginning and some at the end. The spices we put in the beginning, we want to intensify and deepen, and we want them to come together. But we want to put some things at the end so their flavors are really sharp and intense. And 2 things that I consider absolutely essential when making pasta sauce are vinegar and sugar. In Italian, they call this agrodolce, which means angry and sweet. The vinegar is angry or sour, and the sugar is sweet. So I like to put in about 2 teaspoons of vinegar. Here I'm using apple cider vinegar, but you could use balsamic vinegar, is really nice. Red wine vinegar is also nice. They all have different combinations, and so you can play around with it. Both brown sugar and white sugar are good. I prefer white sugar when I'm using balsamic vinegar or apple cider vinegar, since those both have a lot of flavor of their own. And if I'm going to use something like white vinegar or red wine vinegar that doesn't have as much flavor, I'll use brown sugar to kind of give some of that deepness. So we're going to stir our sugar and our vinegar in. I don't like these to cook these in. I like these to be really bright, sharp flavors. And the last thing that we're going to kind of stir in is some Italian seasoning. This is a little, I'm going to reach under this camera again to grab my Italian seasoning. There's a few different spices in this Italian seasoning. I'll put some in my hand. So this is my own little concoction. There's a little oregano. There's some thyme. There's some mora jam. There's some dry basil. And we want the flavors. We're going to put in a fair bit of this stuff, probably a solid teaspoon, maybe a teaspoon and a half. You really got to taste it. Keep tasting it and see if you like it. See if it needs more. Start with a little bit, taste it. If there's not enough flavor, add more. And the same goes for the vinegar and the sugar. These things we put in at the end, you can just keep adding them until the flavors are just like you like it. If it's too sweet, you can put in a little vinegar. If it's too sour, you can put in a little sugar. If the flavor is just not bold enough, you can put in a little bit more salt, or you can put in some different seasonings. So let's go ahead and give this a taste. It's very very hot. So make sure when you put it in your mouth, you let it cool down first. Needs a little salt. So don't be afraid. If you need to put in... Is there any salt coming out of this thing? There we go. Okay. Put in a little salt, put in a little sugar, put in a little more seasoning. And there you go. This stew is great. Let's give it one more taste to make sure it's just perfect. It's good. That flavor's intense. It's a little sweet. It's a little sour. It's really tomatoey and meaty from all the sausage in there. It's really great. You can take this, you can put it on rice, you can put it on pasta, you can mix in some ravioli, or you can just eat it the way it is. I hope you enjoy it. I really recommend you try this recipe. It's one of my absolute favorite recipes of all time.
Mine too.
And Susan's too. Enjoy, and as always, may the force be with you.